Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 21st Effingham, New Hampshire Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'm Chuck Fuller. To my right is Lenny Espy, and our other third selectman, Tom Hart, has a family matter today, so he will not be here to join us. Before we get started, could we do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, signature folder, Selectmen's minutes of September 15, 2021. I make a motion. We approve those minutes. I hear a second.
Second.
All in favor, Fuller, aye?
Aye.
All right, minutes of the budget work session, September 16, 2021. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
Aye.
Approval of the manifest dated September 23, 2021, in the amount of $27,000. Excuse me, $27,051.88. So your second?
Second.
All those in Fuller, aye.
Aye.
The school payment, did we make one this month already?
No, it was due, and the bill was in there, but it wasn't on the manifest, so
Okay.
it'll go out next week.
Okay,
It's relatively small for 10,000.
okay. All right. In the mailbag, we had a notice of cut on Pine River State Forest from the New Hampshire Forest Management Bureau. This is the second one in the state forest this year, and the appropriate bond money has been forwarded to us. Notice of public hearings on New Hampshire transportation projects, which is a general. What would we like to know what's going around the state? We're going to join that as a virtual. A butter notice of the planning board, September 30, 2021, the application for Mina LLC. And a letter to the Effingham Falls Cemetery. Under old business, speed reduction on roads. So last week we had a little bit of discussion. One of our citizens from Wilkinson Swamp Road, Tammy, called in. We also had Chief Joe Duchesne here talking about the speeding in town. We did some homework further during the week and managed to get a hold of a couple of state documents, which basically state that we can change the speed limit, providing we do an engineered traffic survey. If we do not have somebody employed that can do that certified work, then it must be hired out. We do not have a price on it because we're gonna have to reach out to find what that price is. In addition to that, it'll open up a broader discussion. So if we're only gonna do one road, why is it Wilkinson Swamp, not Green Mountain, not Townhouse Road? What about the other dirt roads in town that have the same problem? So it's going to be a much bigger discussion. And I will tell you that these surveys aren't cheap. The last time I heard, they were between $5,000 and $7,000 for one survey. So part of what we need to take a look at is there a package of roads we might want to do in kind of like the first survey of like this year or next year. But that's going to take some discussion. So there's nothing that's there at this point in time that we're going to be able to do. The road is a 30-mile-an-hour road, according to the state RSAs. So that cannot be reduced at this point to anything below that. Tom Hart has ordered more road signs to put up around speed limits for within town. So hopefully we'll get those pretty quick. And last week, if any of you listened to the tapes at all, the chief of police is basically going to take one of our part-timers that's already on, and we're going to move him up to 40 hours a week. We will be paying medical, we will be paying pension for that person, and it is within the budget for this year, easily covered. The person coming on will stay in this position until March town meeting. In the March town meeting, we will then take a look at hiring another full-time police officer rather than using part-timers, because the days of part-timers are over. Nobody's in the area is having any issue being able to hire anybody on a part-time basis because officers are not willing to work the extra coverage beyond their normal shifts. Fire department, I think, is running into Same kind of scenarios in the full-time fire departments in the state from my discussions with Municipal Resources Inc. So it's a sign of the times. So we will have more during the budget process regarding what that would look like for a third officer in 2022. And we'll get into more detail. I can tell you right now, the preliminary numbers show we would basically be looking to raise taxes about 18 grand because the rest of it is already within the existing budget process. Any questions? I'm going to open it up from a public standpoint on this particular subject at this point. Is there any questions regarding the speed issues where we are? So it's an ongoing item.
I may be wrong in saying this, but years ago when they lowered the speed limit on Champion Hill, I believe they had UNH do the traffic study.
Yeah, and I think they're connected with Lakes Region Planning. Whenever you do traffic studies, it's through LRPC and then UNH. We need to reach out to them and find out.
But I think, yeah, some students from UNH were there. I don't know, a week, maybe.
All right.
We'll see. My opinion, it's not just a matter of lowering the speed limits, it's also then a matter of being able to enforce the speed limits. I mean, out on Granite Clough, Nutter, it's 25 miles an hour through there, but people race through there all the time. Trust me, I know they're going way more than 25 coming around the bend and past my house, and I'm on a corner. And down the main drag, it's really bad. People were really speeding through there.
It's an issue all over town. So with Chief Duchesne's idea to basically get somebody on during the day, mornings, afternoons, and get them on going around town a lot. Just the other day when we were talking about it in the meeting, this part-timer happened to be on, and within the first 5 hours of Wednesday, he already had more motor vehicle stops than we had all of last month. So we're in a position now with this new idea to basically provide more on the ground road coverage around town.
We need it. We do. My husband has said he actually likes it when the roads are at like the peak of of their worst condition, because it slows people down before they get graded. After they get graded, people are really flying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like, no, I like my car too much. I don't fly on those. But
And as much as Wilkinson Swamp was the one we were talking about last week, it's like it's numerous roads in town. It's not
Oh,
just that one road, and people do fly.
and I'm sure the paved roads are even worse than the dirt roads. So
They all, it's
It-
dirt
it's
and
just
pavement.
crazy, some of the speeds.
I don't know if you know this, but minerals is around the same times every day.
I haven't
Like
really paid
by my
attention to
house
that.
is anywhere between 3:30 and 6. Guaranteed.
Would you
People
do me a
going
favor?
down.
Would you call the police department and let them know that rough time period during the day when you see that activity? 'Cause that's like a second shift change kind of thing, people going, coming from work probably. But if they know some of those areas where there's a consistency and a pattern between, call it an hour and a half during the day, they can actually build that in to make sure that they can be there to do that. I know.
When I see them go by,
Yeah.
it's during the day when people are already at work or no one's around or school or whatever, and
That's okay.
there isn't any.
Yeah, and I know Ian had started doing some of that on Green Mountain Road a year or so ago, where he was actually gathering information from different households along the road around the speed at times of the day. And besides that little speed sign we have that shows you how fast you're going, he was out there actually doing some of that targeted patrol. So that's available. We just need to get the information to these guys and let them figure out how to get it in their patrol schedule. All right, anything
Yeah, I
else?
was to say, I can't really see it because we sit back from the road too far. So
Oh.
much to have like a
Oh, no, I'm
consistent.
very close to the
pattern.
road.
I can hear them flying over my hill.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, I don't hear it a lot from inside the house or see it, so.
all right. There was also last week an email note in the reading file around the ditch work and culvert work on Drake Road and Jones Road intersection. I did happen to personally observed the condition of that on the Saturday night over the weekend, because they started the work at the tail end of one week and they finished it up at the beginning of the following week. And you could see it was work in progress. It wasn't finalized. After the meeting last week, I drove up onto that road and through that area. And the ditches are nice and clean, they're nice curved. There's a new culvert in that intersection. So hopefully we can mitigate some of the water puddling right where that triangle is in the road. The library on Sunday morning, trouble alarm went off. There was a group of us in there, volunteers, removing some of the ceiling tiles, getting ready for asbestos abatement work, which started yesterday and will go through Wednesday. I did happen to stop in there real quick yesterday morning as they were starting, and they actually discovered more asbestos in that room than we were aware of. So we're going to abate all the asbestos we can see to make sure that that's done and it's taken care of. We don't have to worry about that anymore. During the entire time that that sealed room is being processed, there is a separate company walking around the library, both floors, above, around, doing air quality testing. So by statute, they're separated. This is basically to make sure that the person hired is doing the job the way they need to do it. So hopefully by Wednesday, that'll be done and we can start putting that room back together again. Can we update? I'm going to follow up with Amanda at the library on the contact information for the alarm company, because when it came off the other day, it was determined that it was many, many years old. So I have that on my to-do list.
Do you want me to check and see if you have a contract here?
You can, but I don't think you're going to find anything. So what's happened is A and B, who we use for the town, does all the door security and anything that's monitored from that standpoint. The fire alarm is actually through night security out of Wolfboro. Now, I've tried to call them 3 or 4 times and can't get anybody to call me back. So when I had the monitoring outfit on the phone the other day, I made sure I got a number where I could call and get that done. So we've got the number to call to update that information. Also last week under old business, we had a discussion where Mike Cahalan was talking about a ZEO or perceived issue regarding one of the permits inside of town. The issue as it developed, I was keyed more in on the issue than I was around the bigger picture of it. That should have been a non-public discussion because it involved an employee of the town. And I missed that. And I told Rebecca today I would take the opportunity to apologize on tape for missing that. There is an ambulance meeting next Monday night, the 27th, 6 o'clock, Freedom Town Hall for the 6-town contract. Because the selectmen usually attend that, can we post that as a public meeting?
Are you
So
all attending?
I know I am. And I'm not sure about Tom.
Sure.
I know he will if he's available. And the other thing, Lenny, I would like to have Mike come along with us for that meeting, because he and I were the ones that basically wrote a pretty good chunk of that contract for the entire town system. And we've got a lot of the details in our records. So I want to make sure we get the formula for what our town is going to be obligated to pay for 2022. I want to make sure the formula is consistent and accurate. Would you have any issue with that?
It's not.
Okay. You'll be in the audience. You and I will be up at the front table. The other thing with the Bailey Road culvert and that whole grant process, have we submitted all the final paperwork? Do you know? Because I know there's got to be a follow-up process with the state so we can determine how much we're paying. We will have paid in interest or need to pay in interest. And if we don't do it, then it starts accumulating at twice the rate. Did you know, can you check and find out where we are with it?
On the CMA,
It's the whole process for CMA, every payment is there, everything's in. Because the
They
number should be
just-
about 73,000.
they just submitted request for payment yesterday, so it's not
Okay.
complete, but I will double check on
Perfect.
the process.
That may do it then, that may be the final piece. It's just follow that one as soon as we get the interest back on that one and we get money. Or we pay money and then wait for money. We can follow up with the state to sign off on that one so we can eliminate any additional interest. And for those that are wondering what I'm talking about, when we started this particular project for the Province Lake Drainage project, we did receive a $75,000 grant that Mike had applied for from the state to cover all of the engineering costs. And it looks like the total costs are gonna be in the neighborhood of 73 grand. And our interest at that point in time during the process is up to 1%. Or excuse me, is 1%. And we voted at the town meeting that year to basically have $900 appropriated to pay for that interest. So we'll have the money to do it. The process is there, but we're just looking now to complete the process so that the interest rate doesn't change and go up further.
Can I just?
Yep,
just
on that one.
Audrey, maybe this might be helpful for her. We know that CMA, once we get them paid, they submit the reimbursement request to the state, which has been the process, I believe has been taking place. After that's received, the final payment, it's Kathleen Beret is the individual who closes that out and would have all the financial commitment information. And if you need, she's on the website there, but I also have contact information.
All right. Good. All right. Audrey, can we, in looking at the budget to actual last night, I noticed that we hadn't paid the moderator for the work she did back in May. Can we pay her check? And we have not yet paid the OSSP rep program $10,000. Can we pay that check? When we're getting ready to go into budget discussions, it would be nice not to have an outstanding bill in that arena. So if we can, thank you. All right. And I believe, Province Lake Association. So I received an email from Lori Dunn, who's the president of PLA. And she was made aware that the Effingham Conservation Commission does no longer want to put the annual funding requirement for the Lake Host program as part of the ECC budget. As the number has grown a little bit over the years, it now looks like a huge chunk is going to this one thing, and it kind of skews their looking at their budget to understand what it is they do. So they've basically said they would not include it in their budget this year. And we're going to take a look at including it in the selectmen's budget. This program is basically set up during, I'm going to call it the good months of the year, to monitor boats going in and out of Province Lake from milfoil. We're one of the few bodies of water around that doesn't have it yet, and they're trying to maintain that. Last year, they spent $8,400 on that. We had contributed $2,000. And Wakefield also had contributed about 30% more than we did. And PLA is asking this year for $1,000 increase from each body to help cover that. What's important to remember about this one is that quality of that water affects the home values on that pond or lake. If milfoil goes in there and the body of water is no longer as attractive, that means the value of the housing that's in Effingham on that lake has a possibility to go down, which would directly affect our property tax rate. So this is like an investment to make sure that we continue to get as maximum a rate as we can. Yes.
May I speak for, as a member of the ECC, why
Yes.
we made that decision is because it was felt first off that this never should have been part of ECC's. We take care of milfoil removal expenses out of our budget, but this is boat inspections. And they felt this was more a town matter than an ECC matter. When it started at $200, we didn't speak up and say anything, apparently. I wasn't a member then, but apparently there are a couple of long-term members who never agreed with that decision in the first place for it to be part of ECC's budget, and now that it keeps increasing, and our budget is only this big, in a way, the town, my understanding is already paying for it, because that's part of the budget we get from the town is to cover that. So it's not really putting the expense somewhere it's not coming from to begin with.
It makes it go through a lot more hands.
Right, we would have to ask for the increase in order to pay the increase, so it's still, regardless, it's coming out of the town budget, we're just kind of asking for it to officially be placed under that. That way, that money would not be part of our budget anymore anyway, and this wouldn't be part of ECC, because it doesn't fall under our
Mission,
obligations.
yeah,
or
your
our-
mission really
Yeah,
doesn't.
it doesn't, right, boat inspection doesn't fall under our mission, removing the invasives falls under our mission. in some
Which you do
particular-
with
yeah.
Ossipee, we contribute to Ossipee Lake. Yeah.
And also the boat launch to the Ossipee River, so yeah, any part of any of that that actually falls within the Effingham town lines, we take care of that. Along with the other abutters that are part of that, we all, pay for those things to be done. But the boat inspection, like I said, it's not really putting it somewhere that it hasn't already been in reality. It's just,
Nope.
you know.
Thank you for that additional information.
you're welcome.
Michael?
Yeah, I reached out to Emmeline Albert on the Conservation Commission, she's the chair, and did discuss some of what was taking place in the sentiments that are being shared here, covered some of that. Also communicated with Lori Dunn from the Providence Lake Association. And part of the increasing cost that we've seen in the last few years is actually getting that program up to a proper staffing level or something we think we can protect. They think they can protect the lake with for coverage. So that's where the increases come.
And the window widened last year, did it not?
Well,
On the front end?
And that's activity based, front
Okay.
and the tail end in attending this year's PLA meeting. We see residents now with more of a full-time residential footprint than people who are fluxing in within the school year, the vacation model. So you're seeing people get boats in earlier and leave them in longer. You go down the Providence Lake now, and traditionally, that lake really kind of thinned right out after Labor Day. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. And people still come up and bring in boats. Bass fishing is a thing that starts off early before the season kicks off. So the additional coverage was there also on weekends and during the week to try and, keep people, because they show up all the time. There was a focus on weekends. That's kind of expanded. And the cost, I think, this year going to top over $8,400. Wakefield was providing $3,375, and we were doing $2,000. There's a lot of burden on the Lake Association, but it's the town, as you stated, for environmental tax reasons, and the lake being so shallow, invasive species would just flourish there beyond the lake, like the Ossipee River.
Perfect
And
environment.
it's a petri dish and a half over there. So the investment from the town is significant, and this conversation, clearly town meeting for voting, but in further consideration on how to approach the line item, I had sent something to Mr. Strauss of the Budget Committee last night saying, after further reflection, bring some time to think this process through from yesterday morning a little more. I had suggested to him to consider not putting it under like the selectman's office, which is a good alternative, but as a standalone line item like the Parks and Rec Association, where it is a benefit to the community as a whole, but it really doesn't fit in another category. So it could be a standalone item, and I think the merits of funding this are so vast that it could prompt a single discussion from the legislative body, on an annual basis as increases go. So that's just an out-of-the-box thought on where you might want to see it in the overall budget.
Like I said, the town is already funding it, it's just coming under ECC's line items as one of ours.
good. It makes total sense. I mean, it cleans up a process rather than making it go full circle to come back.
Yeah, since it's
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yep.
like you said, going through
So-
extra hands.
And
which-
Mike, based on your comments, I'll follow up with Dave. So we make sure we include that in our discussions. Okay. That's what I had. Lenny, did you have anything?
You want to go with Audrey or?
Well, the way she had it set up today, oh, I'm sorry, yes. I'm sorry, go for it.
That's okay.
Thank you.
What Chairman Bull is talking about is I provided the selectmen with the town administrator report for things I've been working on over the weekend or the past week, which was relatively short with all of our meetings and trainings last week. Some of the outstanding items, the priorities are the new no through trucking letter and get that out to the loggers and the offer letter to the police officer Eldridge, and I will draft it and give it to the chief to put on the police letterhead, just making sure that all of the personnel things are included in it. The trustees will be meeting on
Do we need-
October.
Audrey, hold on a
Go ahead.
second. He's already done that as part of being on the department. Why are we doing it a second time?
All gonna be giving him benefits.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Then the trustees are gonna be meeting on October 5th, and Deanna and I talked about it. I'll be here so they can get to the files, but instead of having them meet in our office space, we're requesting that they use the outbuilding for their meeting. And we received a notification of disbursement number 4 for the 52,000 on the Bailey Road study. That should be coming in, it's usually a couple days after they send me the letter. And I did respond to Ellen White, letting them know that someone from Effingham, so I will confirm with her that the 3 of you will be at that meeting. And I will get the snow road paving advertisement into the newspaper probably Friday, Sunday, what?
Yeah, that'll do.
Okay, all right.
You know, the weekend is usually when people read that the most. Saturday.
Okay, those are my highlights that I'll be looking at.
All right, 2 other things. I know I had sent an outline to Darlene around the whole historic town hall project, L-chip money and all that other stuff, and she was gonna look at formatting it for the budget actual. Do you know where she is in that process?
Did she send you a spreadsheet yesterday?
She sent me at Chris's request, she sent me an email that basically said, here's how much each of the contractors have been paid this year.
Okay. All right,
But-
no, I don't remember hearing that.
Okay.
request,
So right now, we know we've got the $82,500 grant. It doesn't show up anywhere at all in the budget actual. I mean, we've got the money, but it doesn't
Mhm.
show up.
Okay,
And we also had that Effingham Preservation Society voucher process we used where they gave us, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 grand or more, maybe even higher than that, early in the year for the deposits. I don't see where that flows for anything either. So before we really get into the serious budget part of it, we need to probably have that documented for the budget committee and the selectmen. Another item, the CPA audit, I know is we're waiting on the report. And I believe some of that is related to the capital asset binder that's being completed. Would you ask the CPAs if we can get a draft copy of the report to show us what some of the numbers are?
all right, I'll reach out to Tim today.
Okay. Anything else, man?
No, there's 2 workshops this week. One of them is called A Hard Road to Travel. Darlene and I will be listening to it tomorrow. And one of the outstanding questions I sent in was a few weeks ago, we had 3 property owners that said that due to a road widening, they no longer had the marks on their stone wall. And I had sent letters to the three of them. And one of them came in and said, that's not acceptable based on his counsel, that the town is still required to replace property boundaries if they have impacted them. So that's one of the questions I'm gonna have for NHMA in this workshop,
Okay,
because it seems like the best venue for it. And so next week I'll be bringing to the board any recommendations or,
would you send me an email with the property addresses for those three? Send it to the board,
okay,
because I think we'd like to do a drive-by on that too. To take a look at it.
yeah, one lot is behind the other two. And the deed says between this stone and this stone is the right of way, and those stones are no longer there.
That's true of a lot of our towns, a lot of the roads in town. And a lot of them have that same thing that have been removed over the years. Same thing with pipes.
So the gentleman that came in thinks there's a liability on the town to replace those, which would mean a survey, I imagine.
Don't know.
I don't know either. So I will be bringing that next week.
Okay,
And then on Thursday, there's a short workshop on the basics for HR/personnel staff through the New Hampshire retirement system. So we'll also be listening to that in our office. And anyone's willing, welcome to join us.
that does it. Good.
Yeah.
Lenny?
Speaking of rocks, I don't ever remember the rocks being in each side of that driveway.
Don't even, I want to take a look at it again.
Um,
It's like all the other, there's a lot of them in town that have been removed over the years for different plowing, road widening, whatever it might have been. And there's like no historical time frame to say when it was done and who did it. So we
I
need to
believe
take,
he said 1991 or 93. This guy has his,
we'll do the homework.
alrighty.
When you look at that road, that side of the road, for a long ways, there's no stone wall on that side of the road, so. I mean, as far as removing rocks, I don't even ever remember being.
So once we get some additional information, we're probably gonna need a legal counsel discussion on that around the liability. Lenny?
Okay, like I said earlier, I did talk to Kevin Cody yesterday. The door supposedly is supposed to be here sometime within the next 2 weeks. And I mentioned to him about the siding down to the fire station. And you guys offered some siding too.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Oh, okay.
Don't know what she did with it.
All right, it's all right, but he said he'd use it, so.
Okay.
Trying to light a fire under him to get it done. Any idea where the oil tank is? It's
No, I can follow up.
get a delivery date on that, because we like that, and just stick it right inside.
Okay.
And
Just before you go further on that one, if for some reason they are just a drop, which a lot of them are from a truck standpoint,
yeah,
I'll get my tractor with the forks and come down and we'll move it in.
okay. Sounds like a plan. While we're at the transfer station, the old oil tank that we used to use sits outside. And I'm sure that catch basin in the bottom of it's full of water right now.
Has been for years.
So I don't know why it got moved out. And it's something clean.
It was
Clean
because-
Harbors has to pump out.
It
So,
was moved out of the shed because the way the earth had been moved around down there, the shed was filling up with water. That thing was overflowing. So we decided to take it out to get it out of the overflow.
Yeah.
But I think now we need to take a look at how to get rid of it.
yeah. You know, now it's overflowing.
Yeah.
And that salt pile, I don't know why that's there, but that is hard as a rock. It's, I don't know if they could bust that up with a backhoe. I don't know how, if it's a solid block or if it's just a crust. but there's some money sitting there that,
Where was it? I can't picture it.
in the building down
In the
there.
building. Okay, yeah. All right.
I mean, they're not storing sand there anymore, they're all hauling it out of here, so. If they can bust it up, we ought to see if they can save it. Bring it up to the salt shed.
Okay, yeah, I know he brought it down because he will dump a lot of sand down there before.
Last year, they didn't dump any, in fact, they never plowed it out, so people can get
Okay.
it. To get
All right.
sand. You know, a load of salt's pretty expensive, so.
Mike, can you touch base with Mr. Evans and find out if he's actually, as Lenny said, looked at that anytime recently to find out the usability of that?
Yeah, I think this came up before and it was, turned out it wasn't really salt the last time it came up, but I'll get in touch with him and see if he can remove it to a better location where it's more protected. That is not a great location for that, and it's
No.
right next to your monitoring well, so if water does get in there, that's not set up really to hold
To
salt
hold
by
that, yeah.
today's standards.
Yep.
And the other thing we had originally planned when we cleaned it out was to put the poly culverts, which the black ones aren't super susceptible to it, but plastic is UV susceptible. So those culverts are supposed to end up in that lean-to structure. So I'll touch base with them on removing the salt, whatever is in there.
They're getting the,
And if you guys still are on board with putting the culverts in there,
You okay
I'll
with
ask
that?
him if he can do that.
Yeah.
Seemed like it could, because you can't put the oil kind of stuff in there. Like, there's not a lot you can really keep from the weather or elements that won't have another detrimental effect. The culverts are a thing you could protect it.
okay,
I mean, if he's down there with a backhoe, trying to bust that up or whatever, maybe you could haul them cement blocks up from the bridge, put them back up to the. Because there's 4,
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, get them back up to the transfer station.
Yeah, and they can bring forks down and move the culverts. And, yeah, I'll talk to them about cleaning that up.
The Sawzall they wanted,
I heard the outcome.
the Bill was gonna buy it, and then he get there and he said, well, you know, you buy the Sawzall, and you can buy the batteries, charger. Says it was up to like $500, he said. So then in talking to him, he said, well, we got one, we just need batteries. So they had an 18-volt DeWalt, but the batteries died. So they took them to the hazardous waste day. So I said, well, I got the same exact Sawzall, I'll just bring a battery over and you can use it. And then Monday I'll go to Home Depot. Use a couple.
And we get the charge, so the charger for it?
Yeah, they had the charger.
All right.
Well, guess what? 18 volts obsolete.
20 volts.
Yeah, it's all 20 volt now.
Probably a corded would be good for them because
There's
there's
no-
battery maintenance and stuff.
There's no electricity in the white shed, so they'd have to drive a cord across the thing. So looking around, they made an adapter that goes in the 18 volt to set the 20 volt batteries and with a charger for $150. So I bought it. I'm gonna use it. And I give my other old battery to the town, so save town some money. I did buy them a couple new blades, they did want some blades. So that's, they're all set now, so.
So we cannot get any new batteries for that particular model, even if we went out to the internet search?
I don't know what, you might be able to find some on eBay or
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
somewhere.
say, maybe
Do we
on
need a
eBay.
couple of them for
Well,
backup system? or-
well, I have 2, so Bill's got one, I'll just give him the other one tomorrow.
Okay.
My other charger, because I don't need it now, so. When those die, because, you know, they don't last forever, they just keep getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Probably then we could buy the adapter and go to the 20 volt,
Okay.
cross that bridge when we get to it. So that's it for the transfer station, mowing contract, and the transfer station ordinance, we should maybe work on that sometime in the near future.
For the cap? Or?
No, for the waste oil.
Oh,
We started
yeah,
on
yeah,
the,
yeah, okay.
you know, changing fees and everything else.
Well, Andre, you did some homework on that or no? And you came back with a buck, right? It's,
Right, and last week, I believe you said you wanted to have salesmen come in.
I wouldn't mind having them come in, but I think to move this forward, we can have a discussion on the price tag part of it.
Yeah, what we're gonna charge. Yeah,
You
Have
want
you
that
given-
next week's work session, or?
Have you given any thought to that? How much?
well, it was $1,
Don't want to get rid of it.
yeah, 165 for the test.
Yep.
So you have to, I charge at least $2 a gallon. You don't wanna make it $5 a gallon. 'cause
Yeah,
you'll
no,
find
we'll
it
do it.
dumped out everywhere.
Okay, two sounds good to me.
Yeah. we'll talk
We'll
about
put that on next week, Audrey, and we'll nail that price down and then we get
Because
it.
we've been holding off on that to get the price of the oil, so, because we have to have a public hearing,
Yeah,
do it all at once.
okay,
Okay. And when Tom gets back, we'll talk about the mowing, have something written down for the mowing contractor,
okay,
some specs. It's all that, you know.
okay. We have one item that I wanted to bring up in the meeting today. We finally got information back from the town engineering company for the Bailey Road Province Lake Drainage Bridge culvert replacement on Bailey Road. HEB came back with a multifaceted timeline. Total timeline through the project into next year was 51,000. Further discussions been had with them, and the billable by the hour, not paying the invoice up front, but by the hour. The 32,700 for phase one will be what we'll be taking a look at to get the permit. We do need to start this like now, if we're gonna do anything on that bridge next year. If we delay this for any weeks or months, the bridge repair is not happening next year, and it'll screw up the grant that we just applied for. Mike, what was it, 150,000 we applied for the grant?
Yeah, so
Okay,
we put in a match from the town that gave us enough leverage to go for $150,000 grant. ARPA funding was another 150. So a lot of this, hopefully, if we're successful at some level of the grant, will be covered by funds that don't actually come from the taxpayers. And as you said, the timeline is extremely sensitive if you read through the document. And it lays out why through the process, which permitting takes a long time, so not everything will wait on permitting. You'll do advertisement, big documents, design. There's quite a bit of engineering work, geotechnical borings and readings.
I didn't realize we had to do two different sets of borings till I was reading this.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation there, so they're gonna do that in-house. Going outside is extremely expensive these days. I think you're going to the dentist and then finding out you gotta go to the orthodontist. It's a big price. But your timeline ends up in like October. You're still working on some of this stuff, which you're cutting it
October
close.
of next year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of a dangerous timeline. That's starting signing that basically today. And they cover all the big documents, big reviews, on-site stuff, you know, any tweaks of things that come up out of those discussions.
The oversight like we did for Snow Road Bridge. to
And
make
then
sure-
oversight is a separate entity because it goes based on construction cost. Rule of thumb in the industry is basically about 12.5%. So once you narrow down your bid docs and you put it out and you have a contractor sign on for X amount of money for the construction work, that's what we get you based on. So that we can refine down the road somewhat, but it would be an additional. None of this steps beyond the scope presented by CMA engineers in their report, though. So any additional funding the town might request on the bottom line of this whole project would just be to hedge your bets against inflation. Having another COVID year that affects the economy, steel things go up, you know, So that's a conversation that could be had before warrant articles get put together. The one reason you would think you do that is, you can't spend money that was not appropriated. But if you appropriate money, it's fine to let it lapse and go back in the general fund and use it for another, purpose to offset taxes or another project. But you've got to need probably a little safety net in today's environment, having projects.
Which is what we did with Snow Road, and we are turning money back in when it's all said and done.
Right, and that's another follow-up, just a sidebar, I reached out to HEB for total invoicing and be sure that we've collected all the invoicing from them, and we'll have the total expenses for that project so that we can align that with our grant request for reimbursement from the USDA, which we have spent enough to max the 250, so that's just another thing going on with HEB. But that's, that project is such that if you don't do this and that road fails, which it's likely to do, the expenses would be much greater, and you would potentially lose your ARPA funding and your grant funds.
For that use.
Right, and then you probably have an inflated project cost as well, because every time you call that plumber or electrician in the middle of the night when it's an emergency call,
You pay for it. And I know based on looking at the estimated completion dates, this would give us a program and a bid process that would allow us to get a final selection of a contractor with a fixed number. So that when we get to the town meeting in March, we'll have that, so there won't be any guesswork whatsoever.
Correct, that's been my practice, is trying to bring projects to the town. That's been a little different, is bringing them to the voters with the full price there in front of them. And I think people appreciate that, you know what you're buying, you've got a design, you've got an engineering company, you've got a contractor, you have all the questions basically answered in front of you when you make the decision.
Okay. Do you have any questions on discussion standpoint?
No.
All right.
Chuck, if I may.
Yep.
CMA put engineering projections together originally, and this number is under it, as well as the projection for engineering costs to oversight at the point of construction was right about the same amount. So from a competitive standpoint of what we've seen put together, this is actually pretty well.
Yeah, the
aligned.
town's engineers coming in very
Actually-
competitive or slightly less.
We're actually under.
Yep.
Just as
Okay.
a sidebar.
Then
Did grant did that get submitted Friday?
it got submitted in time.
I tried
And it
to
was
dump
preferred.
that off on Chuck, and unfortunately he had to be out of town, so I found out, I think Thursday. But it was just minutes after 2 o'clock on Friday. I completed everything and got that in.
And you got a written confirm back, they
I
received it.
got 2 confirmations verbally from Sally and Katie Zink, Sally Stool and Katie Zink independently, because I did want to make sure that one of them got it. But yes, then it was followed up with written confirmation that I didn't forward to anybody. I can't remember who was on that list, so I was remiss in doing that. I'll try to find that.
So the review process, just kind of to help the public with it for this grant, we should know roughly when, October,
October.
November, October,
Mid
whether
to-
we're eligible and how much.
Right, mid to late October, a decision should be made by the governor's council on when we've got the approval, and then the funding will, follow as to the number of that. And then when your eligibility starts is, I think it's the Army Corps of Engineers, or potentially there's an EPA component that there's a step now that's been streamlined to allow you to move forward to some degree sooner than in the past.
So from a budget planning standpoint, we should know answers right in the middle of budget season. So if we're not successful in getting everything we asked for, we can tweak how we're gonna do this bridge next year.
That's right.
Okay. I'll make a motion to sign the HEB engineering contract for $51,000, which will be invoiced time and expenses, and the money is currently within our budget to do that. Phase 1 would be one we'd be taking a look at, which is the $32,700. The remainder of that would go into next year. Here a second.
Second.
All those in favor, all
Aye.
right? Good, thank you very much.
So can I just ask you, I spoke to Mr. Hartley last night, and he was going to contact you because I kind of filled him in on this, and he just wanted to share that he was supportive of the
He-
project. I don't know. if you-
Yeah, he did send me something that,
Oh,
that said that, so. All right. Okay. We'll deal with that one. Okay, that's all I had for mine. So, department committee updates, Mr. Fire Chief.
Yes, sir.
Saw the report. I know you covered some of this last week in our work session, but I think the public would be nice to hear what's going on. Daytime,
Yep.
off-time coverage, that kind of stuff.
The daytime coverage is going well. A couple of nights here and there, but there's always been somebody at the station. You asked about 244 High Watch. I did some research. We went up there by the end of September last year, up there 54 times. We just went up there this morning for the 54th time.
Or like the numbers are keeping
The rest
tight.
is the same.
Okay.
So that's one. Our ordinance for inspection, we're working on our fire code handbook. There's mostly applications and rules and regs and that in here. It's a work in progress. When you think of something, we add it. And then our application for installation, we wanted to change, to take out natural gas. So we just put other, but now we're gonna change our email because we lost the one we had, but we've gotten into the town one, fire at Effingham NH.
Oh, perfect. Have we updated the website with that one?
But I'm aware, I'll have to ask.
Okay.
Teresa.
Can you, has your computer been set up to receive emails at fire at? Effingham NH?
We're getting emails.
Okay, good, okay,
And you're
perfect,
sending emails.
good,
Everything.
all right. I'll change everything in the records then. All right. The High Watch, the numbers we asked Randy last week in a work session to just try and gauge the run rates from a year ago to this year, whether there was more or less activity up at High Watch. It appears it's roughly level. As a reminder for the public, we also have a contract with High Watch. So they actually reimburse the town for their calls at the town rate. So that activity is basically covered and that money comes back into the general fund at this point in time. Anything for Randy?
No, just a quick question, the no through trucks, that emergency vehicles are exempt from that, correct?
Is that,
The no through trucks.
Yeah.
Emergency vehicles are exempt from that.
going to a call?
Yeah.
On the way back, no.
No.
Emergency bill.
Oh, I see Teaser Falls fire trucks by last night and they arrested them. This, I wonder if they come across Hunter's Bridge,
They do.
which I don't mind, but
If it's an emergency,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know how it is in Maine. What is in Maine?
but I'm sure they went back that way too.
Town maintenance vehicles are typically another exception. Heating fuel stuff.
Okay, Randy, anything else?
Not like him.
Good, and I see you need non-public today too?
Correct.
Okay,
Excuse me, for the minutes, is High Watch synonymous to the Green Mountain Treatment Center?
Green Mountain Treatment Center is
Because
one.
that's who we have a contract with.
Yep.
And it's only ambulance responses we get reimbursed for, not fire.
Well, we do have a fire alarm ordinance in town. After so many, they do get billed. We had a discussion back in March, I believe, because they were well over their limit, but they weren't aware of it, so they weren't aware of it. And since our discussion, we're going up there twice, but burnt bagels in the oven.
So is that something we gotta kind of remind them once a quarter that here's where you're at, or just once a year?
It's once a quarter.
Okay,
But once I hit there, I get three free ones.
Yeah.
Once you get over three, you start going.
all right.
How does that money flow?
Yeah, I was just,
Does
Yeah.
that billing come out of the selectman's office?
Is that,
How does that money flow? Does the billing come out of the selectman's office?
or do you do the billing?
well, we knew either way, I always sent the bill on department letterhead. And money just comes down, you know, here.
Okay, so it's revenue from other departments, okay.
Go to general fund.
All right.
Thank you.
I know you had done some homework on the commercial form that we could attach to building permit applications. Did you get your final design that you wanted on that, other than the email address?
Like I said, we're gonna change the email address.
Yeah, other than that, are you okay with what's there?
Yeah.
All right. When you get that done, let's deal with it as soon as we can, and we'll get that on the books.
Okay.
So we can work that. Okay, we are at public comment. Do we have anything on the phone?
We have no one on the computer.
Okay. From the public? Yes, back one.
Good morning. My name's Kelly Govern. I'm a resident of
Mhm.
And I'm in a butter to Province Lake Road, map 404, lot 46, which I would like to understand, or gain an understanding about land use and regulations of how land is used. The land was cleared starting November of last year after it was purchased. The land is listed as a business. It's listed as industrial commercial. It is owned, and this is just stuff that I've read from the public information. It's apparently zoned rural agricultural. I just capped all my knowledge. But
You're doing good. You've got,
but if I may approach, I'd like to show you what I'm looking at. So the property is being used to store boats and apparently eventually going to have a building on it, according to the owner. There are 6 boats up there now. 4 of them are not mobile. They're in a fixed site. There's room for dozens more in that clearing. There is a permit on the property for clearing trees. That's the only permit that I see. I'm afraid, because I'm aware of another property in Effingham this business owner owns, and I'm afraid that this property could look like that one, unregulated apparently. And I don't know what process planning board and ZBA that they're supposed to go through, but I would ask that.
I kind of can help you a little bit with some information we learned last week. So the zoning enforcement officer has contacted the owner and let them know that they would have to make an application. And it's probably going to have to go through the ZBA for variance. And they need to get that done sooner than later, and don't do anything else until that's done. In that conversation, she was also told that his longer term goal is to get rid of the one on Green Mountain and put everything in that one location.
Great.
So then the Green Mountain one had never been through any review process, so that one got by everybody. So if that does work and he is successful doing it and everything works, it could actually clean up that one issue on Green Mountain too.
So as a butter, are there opportunities for abutters to voice their opinion?
Oh,
about
you definitely,
setbacks
yeah. So when they do any of the ZBA meetings or the planning board meetings on that issue, all butters will be notified in writing. So you'll know date and time of meetings and everything else. So that's part of the required process.
and- I mean, people are entitled to have business, but I'm looking at a sea of blue in my backyard.
Yeah, I mean, there's setback requirements and other things too that all get factored into that. So it's like you can't normally put stuff right up tight to the end of your line. So there's things that'll all be addressed with that whole review process. So,
If
you're done with this, I have a question. You want to step in?
No, I'm all set.
I was just curious, you touched on the second location on Green Mountain Road. I know that location and I believe the setbacks are being violated there no matter when it was established.
Yeah, and I'm told it never went through any kind of review.
Right.
It was never followed up on.
So unless it predates zoning, when it started to have a use to this level, and I mean the full level that it was seen now, it shouldn't be allowed to continue. And then the setbacks are simply a violation. You don't get to violate the ordinance at a whim. Just saying, you know, just saying.
I understand as soon as he figured out what he had to do after he had the discussion with the zoning enforcement officer, he went into high gear with paperwork and other things to submit. The other thing you can do in tracking the status of permits, we added earlier in the year a capability off the town website. There's a link that allows you to go in, it allows anybody to go in, not just you, but anybody, and get the full tax card of that property. And
Avatar.
it's an avatar, it's the avatar data, it's gonna take you over to Avatar
Yep.
from the link we have.
Yep.
First thing will pop up is Avatar site, Effingham, you click Effingham, and then you get your search criteria there.
That's where I got the information. from.
Okay, and did you notice way over to the right on the tabs, the permit?
Yep. that's
So-
what I know.
Periodically, you can check that one, because as I've been riding around town to try and see some of the permitting that should be taking place based on activity, that's what I've actually been doing, and when I see it, I send it over to the CEO for follow-up. So that's available to anybody, and if you see something that shouldn't be going on, or you're questioning, like no permit, but you see activity, you can always contact the CEO's office about that.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay.
Chuck, I have kind of a question on the same person. Does he need to have a special permit or anything to have 10 boats at his house?
The depends is really the answer to the question. I'm really anxious to get him involved with this Province Lake piece. And during that entire process, hear him expound that he plans on moving that over to Province Lake if it so passes in the designs he wants to do it. Because that would actually clean up some stuff. And I think at this point, he's got an incentive to do something that he was told can't use it any further than what's
Yeah,
there.
it's not
And-
messy, it just has.
No, it's clean, but it still
At his house,
needs to go through a process. So, anything else from public comment? Yes,
So I know this isn't being addressed yet for this year, but we were talking in a previous meeting when we were talking about roads, about taking Hunter's Bridge and doing the process that was done on the Ossipee portions of Clough Road and Effingham Road. And I know that you're looking at whether or not that is worth the expense versus treating the roads the way that we currently do. I just kind of want to weigh in my opinion now that I know that Ossipee did roll that road and use that process on that section. Because I drive that on an almost daily basis, certainly several times a week, to go from my house out to Hannaford, Ace Hardware, et cetera, 16 regularly.
Yep.
I don't see a benefit to it. Their road now is worse than ours. That section is the part on Effingham. There's a part of that that is absolutely the worst part of that entire journey. So just my personal opinion to note for your research on this. And if you want to take a drive out there, you'll see what I mean. It really, when you hit the Ossipee line, from there out to the paved part of Granite, it's really bad compared to our sections and to what we're doing now on Hunter's Bridge. So I just personally don't see a point in doing that.
we'll definitely take that into account. In part, we've already started talking about that loosely, so when we get into the budget part of that, we're gonna get some detail. But I had an observation, because of the construction work we had on Snow Road this year. So, the road was graded. Calcium went down Friday night. It happened to pour like a son of a gun. And for the next 2 days, we had 400 or 500 cars go over it. It packed down so nice that as other rain in July hit, we had to do minimal to no grading on that road whatsoever or Concord Hill. In the past, pretty much any heavy rainstorm, always damage on Colcord Hill and always damage on the downside of the transfer station.
With the
So-
grading with the calcium chloride stuff, that was the natural process we've been using on these roads.
We-
You're talking about,
No, what,
Dexter was talking about doing a roller process in addition and stuff, and I'm just saying that I don't see that.
we're gonna talk about it. I think it's worth, based on all the DOT studies, that we try a small section of it as a pilot within town, something that's not gonna break our bank at all. And see if we can pick a couple, agree on a couple of the roads, whether it's Hunter's Bridge or Granite Road, whatever it might be, and do a section. Maybe not even the whole road, just do a section of it and see what we can come up with. Because it does, I'm gonna tell you, I noticed a huge difference in the reduction of road costs because of the way Snow Road came out this year and because of the way that was laid down and
I
packed
wonder
in.
if traffic on it has something to do with it, because Snow Road, because of the transfer station, definitely gets more traffic, and maybe Hampshire Bridge does too, than those roads like Effingham Road and Clough and stuff, which is more
But
residents.
think about the weight though. You had, call it 400 or 500 cars over a weekend
Yeah,
packing down the road. So you had the weight of the trucks, you had the weight of the cars. And when you get done and you look going up the road, you had a travel pattern about 18 inches wide that looked like it was pavement.
Yeah.
And that lasted a real long time before all the rain started to break it up a little bit.
well, that's what I'm saying, maybe, yeah, the traffic might be the thing that makes the difference, so maybe it's worth doing in very high traffic areas.
More homework's got to be done, but if we do anything, it'll be a small test to gauge the effectiveness based on that. Mr. Conlon?
Yeah, to your points, there's a bunch of variables involved here. So the material that goes on the road, one of the things we've seen in the past is Snow Road had a lot more issues typically. We have brought in better materials, and if you don't, some of our far to reach away little used roads, we're not maintaining them with the same level of quality of materials as often. So Snow Road benefited from good materials because what's in there is what's called fines. That's dust. When people see the summertime and the dust going, they say, put calcium chloride down because it controls the dust. That actually was not the initial rationale reasoning for doing calcium chloride. It wasn't to control dust. It was a byproduct. That dust are what they call fines. And when you solidify those fines in there, that dust, that's what binds the road together, the bigger particles. So what happens is you look for a certain moisture content, or you hope for it to be in the air. Sometimes you do a pre-wetting when you have a big budget on roads, and you put your calcium chloride down because it sucks up that water and it crystallizes and it binds. So during that binding process, if you have the resources, and Effingham has opted not to do this over the years, simply based on money. We didn't want to spend the money. Mr. Evans has a roller. So if you roll it at the optimum time, it compacts that and it binds better, and you get more of a better turtle shell. The other thing that works against you on a lot of the roads is water pounding. So if you have drainage issues and you're not draining the water off the road, or the water is allowed to sit on the road, or the material on the road is such that it allows it to seep in and it's not really binding, all of these factors contribute to how effective the process works. So a good grading, decent material on the road, keeping the drainage, in place, and then if you are not too dry when you apply your calcium chloride and you roll it, theoretically, the towns that can afford it benefit from it, and that's through DOT studies and the trainings in the state that I've gone through for years. That's that next level of, if we do it right, we should see a benefit.
Which obviously Ossipee did not do on that part of
Well,
it, I'm just
well,
saying, that is.
And to Ossope's credit, they do a lot of roads and they have a lot of work out there, so you can't always spend the optimum amount of money in certain areas to get the best bang for the buck. So that area may not get the attention, heavier traveled road that they really try to maintain gets. It's the same for us on Wilkinson Swamp. if we don't put calcium chloride down, it's in the hitherland out there where there's no houses and the dust goes and nobody complains if we're at that penny pinching point. Or material oftentimes we'll find things are very soft out there and we just don't spend the money to update the road. Mr. Grover came in one year and complained that we're not widening the road, we're not taking care of it, there's boulders, there's all this stuff, it's really narrow. I agree with him 100%. It's just, do you have that money?
Yeah.
To do that work?
That's
And that
great.
would be an increase on the taxpayers through a warrant article, most likely to do some, for that specific expense.
Yeah, I mean, the long-term planning for years in this town, everything was like, what are we gonna do next year? Rather than thinking about 10-year plans.
Right.
So paving got way behind. We didn't do what we should have been doing with paving. Adding gravel to our dirt roads to be able to keep the quality up. We've never done that except now in spot cases where it's so bad you gotta deal with it. It's a balance because of the money. You know, we could do it if people wanted to pay for it, but it would drive the tax rate up. So I'm not sure a lot of people would want to do that. So, but, okay. Anything else from a public comment? Mr. Regal?
Yeah, the last time I was at a meeting, I apologize, a few weeks ago, but I brought up the fact that the stop sign was missing at the end of Wilkinson Swamp Road where it hits Jones. Was there any follow-up on that of,
Mr. Hart is on it,
okay,
and I know Evans also put some additional signage up in the last week or two, particularly no through trucking signage. So I know Tom had actually spoken to him, because there's a list of roads where we have signs going up, and that was one of them.
okay.
I just don't know the actual date that Evans is going to be able to come over to do that.
All right, good.
Hopefully Tom can update us next week.
There was an incident here last year.
Yep.
Mike was involved in it, I know, because I met him out there. I happened to be coming by at the time and he showed that a stop sign should have been there.
Yeah, and we did put a brand new post and stop sign up, and it was only up a few months and somebody stole it. Took the whole thing out. So we've already tried it once. We're gonna try it again.
Let me clarify what Steve said. I wasn't involved. I was reviewing the accident scene for the board.
Yeah. But yeah.
That was not my vehicle that traveled
No.
all that way into the woods.
You know, that's not what I meant.
No, I know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the person didn't slow down for obvious reasons and went across the street. But when the sign went back up, as I said, it only lasted a few months and it was stolen. So we're gonna put another one back up and see if we can get it to work. So. Last item.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think it would be appropriate if we could schedule a Board of Health meeting, something separate from what the select board does. I think we should have a disconnect between those two functions because they are definitely separate. And if we could do that, there's probably some discussions on process forward. And also we probably have a non-public component because of some litigation information that the Board of Health should probably see and understand. Yes, this got a situation moving forward.
Would Thursday, the 14th work? Late in the
Um,
morning, like 11 or something like
So
that?
I'm open. I'd like to see if David would be available. Okay.
I mean, would you be available on the Thursday, the 14th?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Vicky.
I do have to check his calendar, but my phone isn't on.
That's okay. Well,
I
You
turned
you
it
can
on.
check it. We're not gonna put it in stone. We're just, we'll want,
Thursday, the 14th at 11.
That's what we're
Write
looking
that
for.
down, please.
Yep. and we'll see what we can do. And my guess is we ought to plan at least a good couple hours on that one. Because
Whatever you think is.
are you gonna be able to come in with some of the additional material that you had been talking about relative to other town policies?
Yeah, I can print off some ordinance information that I've got. And then we probably might want to have some discussion on a list of RVs and trailers type things in town that seem to have prolonged stays and whether their usage is within the permitted time and whether or not that they meet a criteria that meets septic systems. And there's probably a little bit more of it there as to what investigative process should be undertaken And then again, the permitting only covers certain things.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be living there year round if you got 150 or 180 day RV permit. So there's a few things, but I think that's a whole general discussion item for the Board of Health to provide some direction.
How much detail, I mean, how many pages in the background docs are you thinking about?
Oh,
Because I'm thinking about getting copies of it, so we can actually read it ahead
right.
of
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I'll dig up what I have in research and fire that off to Audrey, and I can get CCU, and you guys can make sure you get to whoever needs.
Okay.
And David on your reports as well.
Okay, all right.
Little sidebar, because we can't get into, because I'm not gonna say we, David volunteered to perform a service as the health officers with a property, and it was kind of a little out of the scope of what we generally do, but because David has certain equipment and stuff, he's able to perform this, and he offered it. But it was kind of, we're not disclosing
We already,
who or what property, because that was the agreement. So for confidential on.
we
on the
covered that
property.
before you got here.
Oh, okay, right, so kudos to Dave. On that
But
one.
I think it points out the need to discuss that as part of a health officer checklist when you're doing the properties. Using a process that's more thorough than what we've done in the past.
Again, there's kind of an overlap, and I'm always the guy who says everybody needs to stay in their own lanes of authority. And checking that was just like we said, David offered, and we just happened to have that kind of equipment. And on site, we had this discussion, typically things of that nature, I would say send people to and suggest that that's the purview of the fire department and the fire chief. And that if they needed specialized equipment or anything to perform those functions, then we probably ought to be talking to Randy, because I really think that's what it gives me.
Okay. All right, noted. Okay, that will conclude this week's meeting.
Chuck, I have one question.
yeah.
Last week at the bridge meeting, I sent out one set of plans and 2 of CMA reports. and
Mhm.
Those haven't come back through the office.
The plans and one of the reports Mike's got as a result of supported the support docs for the grant request. I have the other one at the house that I meant to bring in today, but forgot, so I'll bring it in next week.
Just for the record, I just received those last evening, so I haven't had a chance to go over them. I'll get those back.
All right, and you're gonna forward a copy of the grant application to the town. for the record?
I'll forward you a copy.
Yeah, I sent all that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We're not going to adjourn the meeting. We're going to take a 6-minute recess, and then when we come back, we will go into a non-public. Thank you very much, folks. Have a good week. Follow up on that whole master plan recommendation, fire tower, green mountain, all that. And I actually had a guy come down from Whitefield, and they're coming just an hour ago, and then they work, they own them, or they just own them. So they can both, depending upon what's going on. He and I walked all the way up to the tail end of that property. There is it's an old logging road that goes in there now, and it's pretty steep, and it needs a bit of work to do it, any vehicles up it. But when I got up there, he looked around and he said, "You've only got a 270-degree view." So he said, companies like Verizon or T-Mobile, those guys, AT&T, nobody's gonna buy cell coverage or put something on there and have to lease it because it's not 360 degrees. Might be able to get something like one of the small ones, PCS mobile, whatever, they might be one of the small ones to do it. And he said if they did it, then the guys would just do individual repeater coverage off. You know, when it's being used, you get tagged for it based on the formula. But he said to do the road and to do the power, just on our walk would be in the neighborhood of 200 grand plus. And he goes, there's no way we could do that and make a profit to do it. And, but he did say if we came up with the money, they'd figure out how to do it. They might even lease it from Leo and Rhonda. So once I knew it was a $200,000 price tag, I said, forget it. We drove back down to the library, and that's where you and I were talking earlier about the Siemens property, the
Yeah.
back side of that one, the 199-foot tower. He said that was the second best thing to cover the territory. So, but I haven't gone in, but the key thing now is a balloon test to determine what actually would be the coverage and where. So I'll do some follow-up. I'll see if I can find that name from that guy. I'll make it a to-do today and call him and find out if I can get him what it'll cost us to do a balloon test to do that.
Yep.
So,
I mean, the state only owns a little piece up there where the tower is.
Mhm.
And I think to the right, well, if you're looking at it from my house, there's two little knobs to the right. I think that went in after the guy logged it off, like cut it off. I think he gave it to some conservation outfit, I believe. I mean, we ought to be able to get somebody to, give us a piece of land or something up there.
Yeah.
I would think,
well, you would check the state's not willing to do anything at the very top of the tower is.
No, because they claim it's not categorized as a communication center. But if they get the fire tower up there, it's got a radio.
So there'd be some kind of political effort at the state level to try and change
Yeah.
that, which would take years. If ever.
well, that was just because the state didn't want to do it. I mean, if we got 2 acres of land adjacent to the state, we could do whatever we want with it.
It's all protected all the way around it though, isn't it?
I'd rather go that way than deal with the state.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, but the only 2 acres are Leo and Rhonda have the only private land that goes that far up the mountain. Everything else is in conservation.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we could get, one of them, whoever owns it from conservation, if they'd just give us an easement, something. And
Yeah.
put a tower up, run it solar as much as we could.
Well, they have that issue on Fireway, it was on solar. And they have a backup generator from the power gets low, like in the winter when you have,
Short days.
so they have a backup generator run on propane. You have a propane tank up there.
So that's a running the truck up. So
Yeah,
there's a roadway, that's a roadway requirement right there.
Yeah.
So, you want to chase that angle with those 2 acres? I'll chase the balloon test to see what we can get.
we'd like to have it. The road you said had a restriction. You can't use it for any utility going up there. It's only because all the landowners that road passes through, well, one of them restricted utilities. It was just an access to the tower. Is that right?
I was told they gave me an easement, so they could pass through their property to get there.
Right.
I don't remember anything about.
So we have to look at the language on the individual
Electricity
deeds.
law.
The easement is.
Yeah.
But I'd be willing to try it, Rhonda's property. See what that would do.
Yeah, okay, well,
Like I said, we were building that house and I was waving to the fire tower. Nobody was up there.
all right. Yeah, let me make a call and find out what it'll cost us to get it. I think when I asked the question a couple of years ago of Ossipee Mountain, when they were doing them, he told me it was like $800 or something like that to come out and just do the testing. The the fire station and up on Townhouse Road next to the library. Wasn't even going up on a mountain. So, but I'll call and ask both of them. So did you say Ospey Mountain was no longer doing them or?
They never heard of a balloon test.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Okay, then he's probably not the one we want doing it.
He's probably so young, he never heard of it.
Yeah.
They probably don't do it anymore.
Well, it's, yeah, it could be the guy that the guy I saw has been there years, so it's like, okay. All right, yeah, I'll call the guys up and wait.
Because when I called him, I talked to Louis. I know Louis been around a long time, because he was doing our radios when I was down in Bedford. And I asked him about the balloon test. Oh, you gotta talk to, give me the name and the number, call him. He's the one that sets that up. I call, oh, we don't do balloon tests.
All right, okay, good.
Well, he suggested taking a mobile. How are you gonna get a mobile if the property's no road on? I'd rather use a portable.
Yeah.
Portable's got the weaker. So if you get out with a portable, you're definitely gonna get out with a mobile.
Do you wanna take a run up there and try it?
We could, but I'd have to have somebody else because they suggested going on the town site.
Yeah.
So first one to interrupt dispatch, but if we could get, because that's our big deal, is if this place opens up as your emergency operations center, you want to communicate with the fire station, you can. So that's the main reason to get that up there, so we communicate back and forth, should you need it during an emergency.
Right.
The rest, if we could get off some of the other towers, so Osprey Valley will pitch in some money, so we don't have to foot the whole bill.
Okay. I'll check with Leo to find out if I can get my ATV up in there. I think I can. I think he take this truck up there. And I'll let him know that what we want to do. And then we can, he'll probably want to go up too, but we'll take a ride up and we'll take a look at it, see if we can get any signal out of there at all.
You know, you get there and have somebody down at the fire station or whatever.
Yeah.
It's probably somebody over here too.
Yeah, I tell you about, last time I walked up it, it was like a 30-40 minute walk up. So it's probably a good 15-minute slow drive. It is not a road by any stretch of imagination. It's a logging road.
Yep.
So, and Leo told me the other day, apparently there is a road. The one George Bull lives on, North Range. Used to be West Range, used to go up over the top of the mountain and come down to Liberty Road. And he said on the West Range side, he said whoever's got it's got it cleaned out enough that they could get an emergency vehicle up in there. And he's not cleaning it out on his side because he doesn't want the ATV traffic and snowmobiles. But there's an old road there too that we can check and find out from an access standpoint.
Yeah.
Where it might come to. So
Never heard of that.
he apparently said, it doesn't show up in any maps I've seen, but he said you can go down on that road where it's cleaned out on the other side. He said you can follow the road. He said it's all grown up. But he said there's enough of the path there that you can tell right where the road was, all the way over on his property. So, all right, we'll do some homework on it. We'll see in the next week or so, see if we can do that. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, yeah, I just saw this, Lenny, we need to make a motion to seal the minutes, make a motion to seal the minutes for 12 months.
Second.
Fuller, aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Make a motion to adjourn.
Well, second.
Fuller, aye.
All right.
Thank you very much, folks.